What's going on, CDL fans? This is the second to last power ranking for the 2024 season. And as you can see on screen, this is the bracket for Major 4, which is starting in just a couple days on Thursday. I mean, heading into the final major of the year and then champs. We really are at the end of the season. And this is everything for the team still trying to qualify to make champs. And then real quick, before we get into the power rankings, this is what the champs race looks like. Right now, it's safe to say Miami and Seattle are probably safe. LAT are pretty much safe as long as I believe Ravens does not make like an insane run at this major. I think the math works out that LAT can get top 12 as long as Ravens don't win 2 matches on LAN, because LAT have the tiebreaker over Legion and Ravens at this point. But obviously, anything's possible. You want to win your matches on LAN, and we got some good-ass matchups. But I'm going to give you my bracket predictions on the Around the CDL podcast, so stay tuned for that. Make sure you follow the Twitter down below so you know when we're going live. But let's get right into it. The second to last power rankings, as I said, for the season. Obviously, the last one will be heading into champs. And unfortunately, Boston Breach are still at number 12. I know they beat OPTIC Texas, but they went right back to their old form in their next matchup against Ravens. Boston, they look a bit better, obviously, like they did take down OPTIC, but at the end of the day, I mean, they still are the worst team. It was kind of a one-off series. They rode that momentum of a bad OPTIC team. And I mean, if you really wanted to move Boston up to like 11, I guess you could, but honestly, didn't want to be disrespectful to the Minnesota Rocker, who I still have at number 11. I definitely just think Boston's the weakest team right in the league for sure. But Minnesota really isn't that much better. Then above them, down 1 spot, our first team to move on the list, it is the LA Gorillas. LAG is an interesting spot, right? They're fighting, obviously, for champs. They are in winner's bracket versus Toronto Ultra at Major 4, so they got their work cut out for them. But LAG is a team that I've never really had too much confidence in this season. They really don't like to play aggressive, and they don't play good against teams that do play aggressive, so they're definitely an interesting team, and I have them at 10. Then at number 9, also down 1 spot from last week, is the Carolina Royal Ravens. The Ravens, a team that are really going to have to fight for that spot at champs, like I explained back in the beginning of the video. Clayster, unfortunately, more likely to miss champs than to make it at this point in time. But hey, we've seen Ravens get top 6s this year. I definitely wouldn't put it past them. But for the sake of my Thieves, I'm kind of hoping, you know, Thieves are going to make it over Ravens, unfortunately, as much of a Clayster fan as I am. But yeah, obviously Ravens won their only match this week. Really the only reason they fall is because the LA Thieves jump up 2 spots. So it's kind of not really at the fault of Ravens, more at the just how good LAT played this weekend, right? Obviously taking down the Las Vegas Legion, who are arguably a top 5, top 6 team, and the New York Subliners, who are a top 4, maybe even top 3 team. So LAT, great weekend for the boys. We finally beat a top 4 team, which feels great heading into the major. We secured that winner's bracket spot to play Miami in winners round 1, which is LAT looking a bit better as we head into the last major of the year, and they got to qualify for champs, man. Champs is my first event I'm going to be going to in my history of watching COD. I really hope my favorite team is there. But then to fill out the right side of the board, down 2 spots, I do have the Las Vegas Legion. Now, Legion lost to LAT, beat Minnesota Rocker. And yes, I do have them down 2 spots. It is a little bit harsh, I think. But honestly, the 2 teams ahead of them, I think, have been more consistent over recent weeks and have really just played really well. But Legion is, of course, an upset potential team. But obviously, you do want to see stuff on LAN as well. So I'm excited to watch this Legion team at Major 4. They always say attach gets a slice of the pie. I don't necessarily think Legion are going to win the event, but it is going to be great to see Dylan Attach hopefully lead this team to maybe a run at the major. And then to get into our top 6, at number 6, I do have the Seattle Surge still. They have not moved in the last couple weeks. Seattle are honestly a really consistent team. They look good. Their hard point always looks pretty solid. I think this team overall is a threat against just about any other team online or on LAN. I'm excited for them. I definitely think they are a dark horse heading into this major. And maybe to the surprise of some people, I do have the Miami Heretics at number 5, up 2 spots from last week. And looking at Miami's recent matches, these guys are actually, I think, way better than people realize. They have beaten every other bottom 8 team, dating all the way back to, I believe it is when they played LAT and lost in a game 5 back in the Major 3 qualifiers. So only their losses have come to the top 4 teams, right? In this split, they only lost to LAT, and then on LAN, they only lost to FAZE and OPTIC, and then OPTIC, and then Ultra, and then FAZE. So honestly, Miami is really beating everyone that they should be beating, that you would like to see them beating, right? Because obviously the top 4 are just significantly better than every other team for the most part. So in that case, I just had to put Miami up to number 5. And I really do think if there's any team that you're going to consider a dark horse, right? I mean, maybe you're not really a dark horse if you're going in as the 5th ranked team in my power rankings, but anyone outside the top 4, honestly, is kind of like a dark horse at this point. And with this season, the way things have worked out, I really think Miami is that team, right? They haven't beat a top 4 team in quite some time, but they have beat just about everyone else. So there is a chance they get an upset on, like, let's say a Saturday and they make Sunday. But now it's time to get into our top 4. And I'm sure, as many people have already realized, I did not drop Optic out of the top 4. So let me explain it for those that are curious. Honestly, for me, it comes down to 2 main things, right? Number one, I don't know who you put over them, right? Like, Miami hasn't been beating Optic. Seattle hasn't been beating Optic. Legion did beat Optic, but then they've also lost to, like, LAT. And then LAT, like, all the teams under them are just kind of, like, wishy-washy. Whereas I know Optic is 1-6, and they've played really, really bad recently. But there isn't any team that has a strong enough case, in my opinion, to go over Optic. And then the second thing, and honestly the more important thing, is we really shouldn't be looking at it as a top 4 right now. We should honestly be looking at it as a top 2. I think Ultra and FaZe are significantly ahead of New York and Optic at this point in time, right? Obviously, Optic and New York both losing to bottom teams in this split, I think multiple times, right? So I really don't think it should be like, oh, Optic isn't top 4. If anything, is Optic isn't top 2, because at this point, that's really what matters. But then, of course, there are the top 2 that I just named, and I do have Toronto Ultra taking the #1 spot as we head into the Major for, I think, like, the first time since Major 1, or I might have had them at #1 heading into Major 3. I'm not exactly sure, but I do have Toronto Ultra back in the #1. They obviously beat Optic. They beat FaZe. I know there was some propane tank cheese on high-rise, but unfortunately, I mean, the final result was Toronto Ultra getting that win. So I do have Ultra up to #1 in the power rankings heading into the Major. And like I said, man, I really think this is just a top 2, right? Like, I think realistically, in anyone's bracket, if you're going solely off of logic and stats and you're not taking any fandom into the case, it should be an Ultra FaZe grand final, right? In a lot of brackets. I think they are far and away the best team. Now, of course, Optic could come out on LAN and look really good again. New York could come out on LAN and surprise people. But overall, man, I do think Toronto Ultra and Atlanta FaZe are by far the 2 best teams in the league right now. It is a top 2. If you have Optic at 5, 6, 7, it really doesn't matter because it's not a top 4 anymore at this point in the season. It's a top 2, and it is Ultra and FaZe. But these are the power rankings, man. Let me know what you think. If you disagree with anything heavily, definitely let me know in the comments. But also, let me know who you have facing off in the grand finals of Major 4 and who you have taking it, man. Like I said, I think logically it's Ultra and FaZe. I might do a little bit something spicy in my bracket just to have some fun with it before the last Major of the season. But I really think this Major is honestly going to be the best one we've seen this year. So with all that being said, make sure to sub. We're on the road to 5K subscribers, and I really appreciate all the support on the recent content. Hopefully, I'll see you guys in the watch parties for Major 4. With all that being said, I'll see you in the next one.